It's time to dive into another episode of the Top 10 Comics on a $100 budget. This time for the fall of 2022. If you've got $100 in your comic book budget and are looking for a book to spend it on, then stick around. We are finally through the dog days of summer, football is back, and before you know it, pumpkin spice everything is going to be assaulting your senses. As subscribers of this channel know, when the seasons start to change, you can expect a fresh batch of Top 10 Comics videos. Now, it's time to kick off the fall 2022 videos, so let's check out that first book. Kicking off the list is the solo title debut of one of DC's hottest characters of the last 30 years. Our number 10 book is Harley Quinn #1. Published by DC Comics in December 2000, this was the first time that Harley Quinn was given her own solo series. Having made a number of appearances in the Batman Adventures universe over the course of the 90s, Harley finally broke into the DC universe proper with Batman Harley Quinn, the one-shot that was released in August 1999, followed up by a handful of appearances in late 1999 and early 2000. By the end of the latter, DC had decided it was time for Harley to go out on her own. The series would run for a total of 38 issues before wrapping up in January 2004. The Dotsons provided the cover and interior art for the issue, with Terry on pencils and Rachel on inks, while Carl Kessel handled the story. Currently selling for upwards of $75 to $100 for raw high-grade copies. If slabs are more your style, you can even pick this thing up in a 9.4 for our $100 budget based on some recent sales. The star of our number 9 book takes the undead and makes them dead in the most fantastic of fashions. Stalking things that go bump in the night is none other than Blade the Vampire Hunter in Blade the Vampire Hunter #1. Published in July 1994, 21 years after Blade made his first appearance in Tomb of Dracula 10. This was the first time Blade was given his own solo series, with cover and interior art from Douglas Wheatley and a story titled Dark Visions from Ian Eddington. This has what every collector in the 90s wanted, a glorious foil cover. Yes, back in the days before an acetate cover could inflame the hearts and minds of the entire comic community, we were all perfectly happy when even just a portion of a comic cover was, wait for it, shiny. You know, oh, how times have changed. Values are kind of all over the place with this one, though. Recent sales for high-grade raw copies have gone for as little as $50, while others have gone for upwards of $100. The challenging thing here is to find a truly high-grade copy of this book, as most of these things have spent the majority of the last 28 years in dollar bins or other discount boxes before the community started seeking it out following the announcement of the new MCU Blade movie. Warping into the number 8 position is Super Mario Bros. Special Edition #1. Riding the coattails of a number of other books featuring Nintendo's signature character, Super Mario Bros. Special Edition is moving into the position of the affordable alternative to books such as Super Mario Bros. #1 and Adventures of the Super Mario Bros. #1. The interesting part is that this issue actually precedes both of those books I just mentioned, and is also the very first book that was ever published by this new upstart comic publisher, Valiant. Despite being the first comic ever published by Valiant and coming out before those two other Mario books, this is not the first appearance of everybody's favorite 8-bit plumber. Mario's first appearance actually came back in February of 1983 in Marvel's Blip magazine #1. Published in April 1990, the special edition suffers from having a so-so cover, while the regular Super Mario Bros. #1 and the follow-up Adventures of #1 both have the same iconic image of Mario gracing their covers. Now selling for upwards of $400 and $160 respectively, the $90 average sales price for a raw, high-grade copy of the special edition is an appealing alternative to budget-minded collectors. The Silver Surfer has been a very popular character over the last couple of years, and his arrival in the MCU is pretty widely anticipated. Cruising into the number 7 spot is a book that's unlike any Marvel had ever produced when it was released. Silver Surfer, The Ultimate Cosmic Experience. Published in January 1978, this Silver Surfer story was the first ever original graphic novel released by Marvel. However, Marvel did not produce this thing on its own. It was a joint venture from Marvel and Fireside Books, which was an imprint of the publisher Simon & Schuster. Marvel and Fireside teamed up for the first time in September 1974 with the release of Origins of Marvel Comics, a trade paperback that reprinted such classic Marvel books as Fantastic Four #1, Incredible Hulk 1, Amazing Fantasy 15, Journey into Mystery 83, and Strange Tales 110. The partnership would last from 1974 to 1979, with our featured book being the only OGN produced during that time. The Ultimate Cosmic Experience was historic in another way, as this is also the last collaborative story between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The story exists outside of Marvel Comics' continuity, but was revisited by Stan Lee and artist Moebius in the 2-issue Silver Surfer Volume 2 released under Marvel's Epic Comics imprint. This beefy 132-page graphic novel will cost you upwards of $100 for a higher grade copy, but it's much more affordable in mid-grade if you just want to check out this piece of Marvel Comics history. Sometimes comics inspire toys. Sometimes toys inspire comics. And the latter is what we have here in the number 6 spot with Spawn 165. Published in February 2007, Spawn 165 officially introduced Mandarin Spawn into the Spawn mythos. The character did not originate from the Spawn comics. This variation of Spawn was originally included in McFarlane Toys' Spawn Series number 14, an action figure line that was released in August 1990. After years of being a fan favorite figure, Mandarin Spawn made his way to the comics courtesy of Greg Capullo, Lan Medina, and David Hine. The Capullo and McFarlane cover jumps off of the paper as the red ink and blood splatter behind the character in the foreground contrasts starkly with the pale white background. One of a large number of Spawn issues of value found between the run of 150 and 250, this issue has a relatively larger print run of 24,418 compared to some issues of this run. In fact, Spawn 243 has the lowest print run of any issue of Spawn with just 11,714 copies produced. Spawn 165 is currently selling for right at $100 for a raw high-grade copy. One of the things I've enjoyed most over the last couple of years is seeing the many magazine series that Marvel put out in the 1970s finally getting some attention in the market. These magazines really shined when they were paired with characters that were best enjoyed behaving in a manner that was unfit for Marvel's mainline comics. Such is the case for our number 5 book, Marvel Super Action number 1. Published in January 1976, Marvel Super Action 1 is a follow-up issue to Marvel Preview number 2. In fact, Super Action number 1's letters page is populated with the responses that Marvel received from Marvel Preview number 2. Preview 2 includes a Punisher origin story and introduces the character Dominic Fortune. In Marvel Super Action number 1, we get not only the second appearance of Dominic Fortune, but Bobby Morse, who would become Mockingbird later in Marvel Team Up number 95, begins going by the alias of the Huntress in this issue. But let's get to the real reason collectors want this book. It's just the 5th appearance of the Punisher, as this predates Amazing Spider-Man 161. Couple that with the action-packed Bob Larkin cover over the Archie Goodwin story that is illustrated by Tony DiZuniga, and Punisher fans have no problem paying upwards of $100 for a high-grade raw copy of this mid-70s Marvel mag. In the number 4 spot, No One Can Hear You Scream. And that's a good thing because our number 4 book, Aliens number 1, is overrun with xenomorphs. An early release from Dark Horse Comics, Aliens 1 was published in May of 1988 and features the first appearance of the aliens in comics. Dark Horse would go on to produce a large number of Aliens miniseries following the completion of this 6-issue series. Back in this issue are several of your favorite colonial marines that met their gruesome and unfortunate ends on LV-246 in the movie Aliens. Mark A. Nelson provided the cover and interior art for this issue, while Mark Verheiden handled the writing duties. Following the success of Prey on Hulu, the Dark Horse Predator book has gained some interest recently in the market, and there's always seems to be an Aliens project in the works, and the property has a number of fans who are anxiously awaiting something new, myself included. Recent sales indicate a slight reduction in average sales price, which has put this book back within reach of our $100 budget. Cracking the top 3 is a book with one of the most stunning covers from the last 15 years, 5 Ronin, number 4. The David Aja cover features a 17th century imagining of fan favorite X-Men team member Psylocke. 5 Ronin is a miniseries that focuses on a different Marvel character, each a Ronin in modern times, as well as the 17th century Japan setting these tales share. Aja provides a cover for each of the 5 issues featuring the following characters: Wolverine, Hulk, Punisher, Psylocke, and Deadpool. 5 Ronin number 4 was published in May 2011, with creative credits going to Aja for the cover, Gore and Parlov for the interior pencils and inks, and finally Peter Milligan for the story titled The Way of the Butterfly. This one is a cover buy for me, as honestly I feel it's one of the most really beautiful comic covers in recent memory, and apparently the market agrees, as this relatively unknown 4th installment of a mostly forgotten miniseries is likely going to run you north of $75 for a raw high-grade copy. Just missing out on the top spot in the fall top 10 comics on a $100 budget list is Green Lantern 201. Published in June 1986, it is in this issue where popular Green Lantern Kilowog makes his debut. But don't let the cover fool you on this one. It may say the Green Lantern Corps, but when you check out the indicia, it's still Green Lantern up until 205. If you watch the critically acclaimed Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds from a while back, then you're likely familiar with Kilowog. He's the really big guy who is voiced by Michael Clark Duncan. Word on the street is that Kilowog will be appearing in the upcoming Green Lantern series on HBO Max. The best news I have for you is that this is the most affordable book on the list, as high-grade raw copies can be had for under $75, and there are multiple recent sales of CGC 9.4 copies going for under $100 as well, if you'd rather go for a slab copy. The champion of the top 10 comics on a $100 budget list is a personal favorite of mine, Web of Spider-Man 118. Hailing from the dreaded days of the never-ending Clone Saga, Web 118 features the first appearance of Ben Reilly, who'd recently just been retconned to be the dead Spider-Man clone from all the way back in Amazing Spider-Man 149, as the Scarlet Spider. A Spider-Man for the 90s, the Scarlet Spider was edgy, yet casual, wearing a blue hoodie with cut-off sleeves over the obligatory superhero spandex. It was recently revealed that the Scarlet Spider is appearing in some promotional material for the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse animated movie. So, if you believe the picture on the front of a board game, then the Scarlet Spider is about to be coming in hot. I know I have a soft spot for the Scarlet Spider, as the Clone Saga was in full effect when I first started reading comics as a kid. Thankfully, I didn't know that what I was reading was one of the most alienating Spidey stories ever produced, but being tethered to the Clone Saga as it is, Web of Spider-Man 118 has always kind of had a bit of a stink on it. Finally climbing up to the $100 mark in recent years, the character is starting to get some love in the market other than just us OG fans from back in the day. And when you get right down to it, Web 118 is one of the more collectible and most valuable comics from the 1990s. I mean, it's no Batman Adventures 12, but it sure as hell isn't a Rob Liefeld issue of Captain America. Thanks for checking out this installment of the top 10 comics on a $100 budget. I know in times like these, having $100 to put towards a single comic may seem like a luxury for some of us, if not most of us. And while we may be in a position where we need to be more selective with our comic book dollars, there are some great buying opportunities out there right now as the market continues to come down off the insanity of the last 2.5 years. Have you checked out Swagglehoss's Comic Index videos yet? Prices are starting to return to earth, and it seems like a great time to focus on quality over quantity, as books that may have recently priced themselves out of your budget slide back into reach. So if you can save up and get a $100 book, or maybe even a couple of $100 book, I think you might be surprised at what you can find out there in the world. Just keep an eye out for sellers who are out over their skis on books they picked up at the peak of the market. You'll know them when you see them. They're the guys with price tags that'll knock your hat off. Collect responsibly, and I'll see you in the next video.